Welcome to UNCAGED, a show that celebrates thought leadership from today's top business leaders. The program provides a voice to amazing executives from around the globe who are shaping the world of business today and mapping the path to the commerce of tomorrow. Today, we are speaking with Brad Channer. Hey, Brad, how are you?
Hey, good. How are you?
I'm well. It's great to talk to you, Brad. Brad Channer is the CFO and COO of RotoVR. He is an accomplished CFO and COO of many, many different types of small to medium-sized businesses along the way. And, we're going to talk about a ton of that learning, a ton of the tips and tricks that he has to set up a business effectively. But before we get there, Brad has an extraordinary background. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your career today.
I love it. Everyone always wants to start with this conversation. So, I came into the world slightly differently. I actually started this world as a performer. So I studied acting and went to the Royal Academy of Music and did musical theatre. So I did kids TV back in Australia for a little while on a show called Bounce House. Played myself in a character called Monkey Mike, who in a giant monkey suit. Yeah,
love it.
So I started the world as an actor, and then ended up the show got canned, and I got disgruntled and bought a one-way ticket to London, and arrived in the UK 14 years ago with 70 quid in my back pocket, and living on a couch, getting people into nightclubs for £1 a person on the streets of Soho in the snow.
Joy. Yeah.
So slightly different to other people.
No. So tell me a little bit about how you got from there to really, I'd say, having an extraordinary background in the operations and finance space and really helping these companies get going.
Yeah. So I have always been entrepreneurial. I've always been into sales and marketing and everything else. And I found myself, when doing shows, the pay was so bad. So, you're doing 8 shows a week and you're walking home with like 500-600 quid a week. And when your rent's 300 quid, it's, you got to, and then you get your transport on top. There was just no money to eat off. So I didn't really want to go and do teaching or anything, even though I enjoyed it. But I thought, you know what, I'll start my own business. I've always wanted to. So I started a company called Free Beer, which again, I worked as an unemployed actor. You work in pubs most of your life. So, and I love sales and marketing. And I figured out this trick where if you gave people free drinks, they would come in, obviously, to venues. And when you're in London, there's venues on every corner. So just when smartphone apps were starting to become a thing, I started this app called Free Beer. So you buy one, get one free once a day around London. And it was to get you into bars, and then I sold you data. Back in the days when you were allowed to sell data in the UK. So, and that's how I made money. And it was a disaster. It was amazing. Everything went wrong that could go wrong. And I got some amazing scars. And there's this great guy.
Honestly, those are so. It's something that we don't talk enough about, which is those kind of like tumultuous moments where just when you think you've hit the bottom, there's some other crisis that happens, and it. But if you have that type of experience, it really builds character and makes you so powerful going forward.
But you need them. And I met this guy once called David Ap John Williams, a really nice guy, old Welsh man. And I was telling him a story once, and he just said, mate, if you haven't got the fucking scars, you've got nothing. But in a Welsh accent, which I definitely can't do. But he had a point, because I reflect everything I learned that went wrong are things that I was able to then stop other people doing. And some things that, were quite straightforward, like, trying to start a business with no business plan or financial model, and just winging it. to going into business, making sure you're in business with a person, with the right people and having the right team around you, so you could actually grow and scale your business. Surrounding yourself by people who know more than you do. I always say to people, everyone knows more than you do. Never think you know everything. The girl who makes your coffees in the morning knows more about making coffees than you bloody do. So if you're in a business that makes coffees, then get that girl around you to make the coffees, because you can't do it. So everyone has a skill in an area that you aren't as skilled in, and it's important. It's the one thing entrepreneurs always mess up. Too scared to not surround themselves by the right people.
Yeah, so basically, it sounds like all of this experience really allowed you to bridge into working with others to help them, right?
Yes.
Or how did that shape?
Yeah. So so after my after Freebie didn't work out, I turned it into a magazine, and that worked out, which was good. And then I fell into consultancy. I had a friend of mine who had a gym, and someone gave him £1 million for funding, which is just ridiculous for a gym. And I came on board when there wasn't much money left, and again, another really good learning lesson. And for both of us, me and him. And it was my first sort of COO role and CFO role, but didn't really realize it. Um, and the term rearranging the chairs in the Titanic comes into mind. And it was a lot of that. But again, a wonderful lesson, because I was learning again on the job, watching this in real life and working with this real life, dealing with creditors and debtors and trying to figure out, there was no sales strategy. So writing sales strategies, marketing strategies, plans, how all these things will start to work and come about, and how we're going to build this business and infrastructure. But I had no idea what I was doing was actually called being a CFO or COO. I just thought it was just common sense. And after that, I decided, you know what, I quite enjoy this. And then I had a mate who was an FD and said, what you're doing is fine, is being an accountant. And I was like, fuck that. I don't wear checkered shirts. I'm not an accountant. Come on. Look at me. I'm not going to do tax in my life. I'm not an accountant. But yeah, so that was wrong. So I went off and I got fully qualified and became a SEMA. I'm a SEMA fellow now. So I went through all that and did all that fun and jazz. And I never looked back. And then from there, because of my experience of having my own companies and working with others, I had a knack for fundraising. So finding funding and helping startups realize what they were doing, to help them get that money, what they needed to do. So there's all these brilliant ideas. You had these amazing startups and great companies, but they had no idea of how to get those ideas into a shape that someone would invest in them. So I found myself in this world where I was helping these companies build these financial models and business plans for the owners and beefing up their ideas, making them commercial and making them successful. And started my own practice doing so and thoroughly enjoyed it for 3-4 years, and ended up working with 60 to 70 clients on a whole bunch of different things and raising 15-20 million for them over the years for different companies. And again, it was an amazing learning curve and experience for me, because then suddenly I then got experience in huge amounts of sectors, from SaaS to B2B to B2C, to working with manufacturing companies and learning how to, doing modeling and being able to do infrastructure and strategies for a company that has, even now every Roto chair has 3,500 parts in every single chair that come from different countries that then get assembled in China and then get exported to different countries. And to be able to learn how to do all that, having one's own practice was incredibly rich in experience. And it's like,
Yeah, I mean, I think for any company, just getting a way, seeing how to orchestrate all of those elements in a way that provides a solution, and then working hard to get that to be more efficient and structured and scalable
mm,
is kind of the key. It's fascinating to me to look at how we're how we fund startups. I would say mostly in the U.S. this is the case, but perhaps it's true a bit in the UK and a couple other markets where we essentially flood them with startup cash,
Mm.
very early on. And a friend of mine just, basically got a huge round the other day, and they're so far away from profitability, and and you create these kind of distorted realities where
Mm.
people think they're successful, but they're really only successful for their investors, and they don't fully get that, like,
You're
so it's
you're singing to
yeah.
the converted. You're preaching to the converted here, and it's amazing. I always have something when I work with companies, because now I work full time for businesses. I don't have my consulting practice, and I've now specialized in tech companies who want to scale and grow and need those next couple of rounds of investment. And if they ever have an unrealistic valuation, and I can't convince the board or the CEO that valuation does not really suit the company, is not matching, I always say, well, let's go to San Francisco, because if you want to be completely unrealistic, go to West Coast America and they'll fund fucking anything. It's about having a. It's like what was that company the other day? The guy got a £1 billion valuation on an idea and had celebrities put money in and everything else. But it's really
Yeah,
interesting.
I mean,
It's
look,
a
I mean,
science
I
behind
don't,
it.
I don't want to knock those amazing
Oh no, no,
technologies.
I'm definitely not. I'm not knocking anyone, but
Like, if for example, something really justifies that valuation, that's fine. What I worry about is kind of the companies that I think fall into your orbit, which would be these companies that actually have good ideas, right? They should grow. They might not be a $10 billion company or $100 billion company, but they
mm,
might actually succeed at being a $300 million company. And guess what? That's not too shabby, right?
no,
Like the
I
world,
mean,
like the world needs more $300 million companies. So it's actually quite good for communities around the world.
I,
And and
I just,
and I feel
yeah,
like that valuation question that you hit on is spot on, right?
I despise the term unicorn. I really hate it when people use that term, because I have this, I have a card somewhere right here on my desk. It's a card that basically says unicorns don't exist, and it's a picture of a horse with a cone on its head. And I love it. I found it at a gift shop once, and it does my head in, because Facebook never woke up one day. Mark Zuckerberg said, "You know what? I'm going to have a unicorn today," and just suddenly it appeared. It doesn't work like that. You have a business that is scalable and it works, and you have a plan and a strategy, and you grow it, and it either works and it doesn't. The market will decide what's going to be a unicorn. If we end game and try too hard to make our companies into these massive things, we won't succeed. We'll be trying too hard. You just got to have the right objective, know what you want, have your house in order, and have your plans in order, and the market will decide whether you're going to become a massive company or not. And I get, I always have this big chat when I meet CEOs and entrepreneurs of these sort of businesses, and it's all good to aim for the stars, and I'm all for that. But if you don't get your £1 billion valuation, it doesn't mean you failed. And this is I meet lots of entrepreneurs of all sorts and shapes and sizes, and I did some work with the Welsh government about 6-7 years ago. A bit of not volume was paid, but workshops to teach people on growing businesses and starting companies. And I remember meeting all these entrepreneurs who have companies that turn over 400,000, 500,000, or even some of them only 10 grand. And I'm like, I'll chat to them and I'll be like, so they're like, oh, I failed. It's terrible. It's not working. And I said, well, hang on. How much do you turn over enough money to pay yourself? And they're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And your staff? Yeah, yeah. Do you pay all your bills? Yep. Great. You're successful. Fantastic. Like, success is what you want it to be. And if you have a business that can actually turn over enough money to wipe its face and have a little bit left over, and everyone's happy, I don't see what the problem is.
Yeah, no, and I would say that I see these companies come out of the incubators, at least the kind of the high profile incubators, with 30-40 million dollar valuations, with literally nothing, no clients, no nothing, and they're very proud of themselves. They're very, you can see it, and I can imagine what it must feel like. Like I was an entrepreneur too when I was 20 years old, but the the problem really is that next round, which is,
Oh,
they I can't tell you how many times I've told people, like, listen, you got to get some revenue in now, like, and they're like, yeah, but that's not what we're trying to do. This, we're trying to do this, and they almost always lose control of their companies. I see it happen like 9 out of 10 times. It's crazy, that the founders lose control very early.
and
And
this is the main
yeah,
problem, but it's also a problem for the VC and the investor as well, because I mean, first of all, yeah, you get an unrealistic valuation for your business, and trying to justify that valuation when sales do start coming in becomes harder, because I was touching on it before, and I wasn't trying to diss the £1 billion dream company, but I wasn't dissing it. But you're selling a dream for £1 billion, right? Now anyone can sell a dream. To put substance behind that dream is when the problems start. So if I have £1 billion valuation, how much do I need to make in sales or revenue or cash coming into that company at what point in time to continue selling that dream to my investors, to keep that valuation? And that's where the pressure is. It's great. Someone wants to give me money for £1 billion. I'll take it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not an idiot. But then on the other hand, I have to now think about how I'm going to turn over £10 billion to get their money to, or how am I going to create that exit for £50 billion to make that investment worthwhile for my investors. And that's the pressure. And that's why I always think I always have this question for those VCs that put that money in at that valuation, because I just think, how are you going to make it back? Like, I'm, do you really think that that will be worth that one day in the
well, I mean,
future?
honestly, I don't think
Gamble,
they.
but
I think it's a little bit of a power move. I mean, look, the reality
yeah.
is, if I do evaluation at that high level, they kind of know that the founders might not hit the
Mm.
revenue goals, and they end up getting more control over the businesses. So in
I
some
just
ways,
want
it's
to
a power move. Yeah.
hugely, and I just want to quickly say at this point, by the way, any VC listening right now, I will happily take your money at £1 billion valuation. So please don't think I'm not dissing you. All right, I want to make that really clear.
Absolutely, absolutely. I
Quick,
think
edit it out. Edit
we're
it
all,
out.
yeah, we're all on the same page on that one. So I mean, the company that you work with now, and
Yep.
all of the businesses that you've been kind of shaping, have been going through quite I'd say, a difficult moment here. The pandemic really changed a lot for companies, and I'd just be curious to kind of hear the experience that you had at RotoVR, and how companies are navigating this time.
Yeah, quite tough to be really honest. I came before going to RotoVR. I was helping a company in Wales, where I was based at that time, and they were a company that specialized in limousine bookings. It's really weird, very odd business, but very successful business. An amazing entrepreneur called Tej, and he essentially owned hundreds of domain names around, or thousands around the US and the UK, and then had some amazing software in the back end where people would call up to book a prom limo hire, and it would go throughout our call center in Cardiff to some boy from the valleys who would book him a car in California somewhere and then hook up the deal and get done. It's a great idea. And I kept saying to her, my wife stopped her, and she's been panicking about this and started, panic buying and storing our roof full of rice and shit for like weeks before, months before it was in the news, right? And I kept saying that my wife's telling me this thing's coming, and it's overdue and it's going to be a big deal. And it's this thing called COVID, and or coronavirus. We were talking then, and look, we need to start preparing, because I'm really, really worried, because we were launching a new platform that was meant to be completely diverse with a whole bunch of other things than wedding cars on there. And I said, we have to do it right now. We have to move now. We're not ready, but we have to go because we're going to be screwed otherwise. And it was this whole, I'll be fine. And 2 weeks later, or a week later, then came the pandemic and everything disappeared overnight, which happens. And like an amazing entrepreneur he is, I always say this, good entrepreneurs bounce. They bounce. So, this happens.
What types of things did he bounce to? I mean, how did they shape it?
He's a serial entrepreneur, so he bounced to PPE. So he was fine. He bounced straight to PPE contracts, and he had manufacturing contacts in India, and he's never looked back. And now he's relaunched that company anyway, and they're doing great, the old one. So he just paused everything and restarted. But I ended up moving to Roto just after the pandemic hit. And I'm sure, I know that the team won't mind me sharing this, but pre-pandemic, we sold 80%. So just for the listeners at home, RotoVR, we make immersive virtual reality chairs. So these are chairs that spin 360 degrees. They're not virtual. They're real chairs, I promise. And we have a little head tracker. When you turn your head, the chair moves with your head. So you can turn 360. It rumbles and vibrates with the sound of the game. It works with any software. They're awesome little bit of kit. They're the only chair on the market that's fully immersive. We're the first one and the only ones currently in the market that has this. And so for us, everyone thinks, well, obviously you must be selling business to consumer. You must be a B2C company. But when I came on board, we're actually a B2B company. And we actually sold 80% of our chairs to virtual reality arcades. So arcades were 20% of our market, then universities, and then the military, because our chairs stop motion sickness in virtual reality, which no one's done, and they keep people safe. So if you're a fighter pilot, for instance, and you're doing work in VR, which a lot of these drones may be flown in, these chairs will stop the motion sickness so you can stay in virtual reality for longer. So for the military, they love the idea. So it was actually the American military was one of our biggest customers at one point. So so we sell lots of these sort of these things. So the arcades were the big issue. So that was 80% of our customers overnight. Come COVID, no one's reopening, no one's opening arcades anymore, and then suddenly everything falls off a cliff. So suddenly we're stuck in a position where we've gone, well, hang on, we've got this chair that's great. We've completely specialized in the B2B market, and now we have to go to B2C. Shit. So
overnight, that's tricky to build that overnight, right?
Yeah. So we had to redo everything. I came on board at that point, so redid the strategy for the company and how we're going to grow it and scale it, and the models behind how to do it, working with the shareholders, with the investors, all the stakeholders to get them behind the new idea and how we do it, raise more cash, raise to more cash again, get prototypes done, completely change the design of the chair to change the cost of goods so we can lower them to get prices more right for consumers, and do focus groups of consumers and new target markets and everything else. And it's been a monumental shift. And it's been a lot of work, but it's great because we've got there. And we're just a bit of hot news. Next week, we're actually launching a new strategy for the company, which is going down the route of another company that's done something similar around the world, but their chairs aren't as good as ours, and they don't do the same things. Well, they don't. They have to use their software, and they're a bit boring, to be honest. They don't spin. They sit there and do nothing. So they're just chairs. Anyway, so we're building arcades and shopping centers. So we're going to be opening our own series of virtual reality arcades with our chairs in shopping centers near you.
That's great. Yeah, I do know that so our head office is in Manhattan, in New York.
Oh, yeah.
And there is kind of a virtual reality. I don't know what it is. It's kind of like, I think it's called the VR experience.
It is. I sold 8 chairs to them.
Yeah, so there you go. Yeah,
there you go.
So
nice guy. Yeah.
Then I probably sat in one of your chairs for sure.
You did. It's a great venue. We flew the owner of that venue down, or the owner of that venue flew himself down to Texas to meet one of our clients, to actually sit in one of our chairs just over a year ago to see how it worked, and they loved it. Yes, they bought 8 of us. So yeah, but it's great. It's growing. It's a new popularity, and of course, the future of virtual reality. What COVID has taught us as society, and I'm not sure how much of America you've gone down this route, but in the UK, remote working is going to be the future. Um, I mean, a lot of people are worried about what they call the water cooler moment. You know, that moment where you're with all the staff and you come up with those ideas, and there's a lot of worry about losing them. And if you look at the market and you look at people like Apple, but Oracle, they're all working on software for office productivity and office productivity software and virtual reality. And some of the stuff that we've been working on ourselves as a company is, holographic keyboards that work in virtual reality and out of virtual reality. So building the hardware to be able to support it. Holograms where we can sit in a room in our VR and our RotoVR chairs and actually see each other face to face, but be in different locations. So you can sit there and use it as an AR, VR productivity suite when the software comes along. But a lot of the major players now are working on the software to do this.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that the space that RotoVR is in is only one that will grow, if definitely for the general consumer market as well as the executive market for sure. And I think you're spot on in terms of that remote working element being there in some form or fashion going forward for sure.
And one of the best things we've had in the VR market and the gaming market is Facebook buying Oculus. It's just been so. I always use the comparison, and some people don't agree with me, but don't care. I always use the comparison of smartphones. So when we first got smartphones as a society, we had Apple, and Apple led the way, and they said the price is going to be X, and this is the charging cord. It's going to look like this. And then we had Android come along and said, this is what we're going to have. It's going to look like this. And then we had Nokia build a smartphone, and Sony Ericsson built a smartphone that did something slightly different. And this is what VR's been like for years. You have lots of these different headsets that come on board and say, these are the power plugs we're going to use. These are the charging cords. These are, you need this thing, you need this room, you need this bit of hardware, you need this, you need that. It only works with this type of software. And most importantly, headset costs would cost £6,000 a headset, or then they would cost £2,000 but be crap. And then no one could decide what the market was. It was so up and down, and everything was so expensive. But since Oculus have come on board, they've sort of the smartphone market. We had Android then come, and Android sort of said, no, this is the price of smartphones. And when you had these two big pillars, Apple and Android, they set the market and they set the bench pole that they benchmarked it, where everyone else went, okay, great. So we're going to have an Android software, or we're going to have so we'll go in the Android software route, and then you had that or that. And we could decide as consumers, and the price could come down. And that's what we've now got in VR. So we've got Facebook now, who make losses on every single Oculus Quest headset that they sell, that have now come out and they're selling it for $299. Now, for the first time ever, that's a price that normal people can afford, and it may start to get that sort of market churn. But now we've got PlayStation now coming out and announced the new headset coming out at $399. There's Apple, who are bringing out now a VR AR headset around I think around 500 quid. So the pricing points have come down. We're getting major players in the market starting to stand up. And one of the biggest problems we have as hardware manufacturers is every second day historically, every second day a new headset will come onto the market that requires new technology to be able to make it work. And if you make a piece of hardware that has to be compatible with headsets, you need some sort of continuity in the market so you can invest your R&D in the right areas to make sure you're not throwing money against the wall, but at the same time serving the customers and not just the trends. And that's the problem with gamers. Gamers love it's a positive thing, but gamers love the new bit of tech that's out. So unless you can keep your piece of hardware updated with all that tech and be at the top of that market, it makes it really difficult. So I just celebrate the fact that now our industry has a market leader in Facebook, and I can't wait for these others to start growing and, some
That's
normality. And
really, yeah,
just
no,
that will
but
be growth for us. That will be the growth for the VR market because there'll be acceptance in people. So, sorry.
absolutely. No, I think that that having those kind of standards are helpful. At least kind of some level of structure there with the big players, so that partners like yours, like your company, can essentially really design appropriately is key. But I mean, honestly, I definitely think that the future is very bright for what you guys are doing. But tell me a little bit about kind of just a broader kind of early stage business operational landscape that you're seeing over the next kind of like 12 to 18 months. I mean, what are companies thinking about right now, and what do you think are going to be kind of the key topics for them over the next 18 months?
I think some of the main ones are going to be. I'm particularly concerned. My particular concerns, I suppose, are going to be around economies post COVID and what's going to happen, especially when we start to look at. There's going to be more lockdowns. I don't think the pandemic is anywhere near to being over, and I think some markets are going to open up early. But again, looking at a UK market, if things, especially the fact that we're going into retail, so if things start to open up too quickly, what impact that will have on us as a business and risk mitigating. So how the hell
Yeah,
do you mitigate a risk like that?
we have a team in London, and one of our team members today was sent back to quarantine because he'd gone to a pub, I guess. And I guess I didn't know this, but in the UK, I guess you have to sign in.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that was interesting. And he said he got a notice this morning saying, "Sorry, somebody got COVID in that
that's it.
bar, so you got to go home for a while." And
Yeah.
so you're absolutely right. We're certainly not out the other end yet.
But the thing is, they still get to work, and I think they still have to work. It doesn't mean he hasn't got COVID. He's just got. It's a fine if you go back to. And this is why I think the future is actually going to be at home working, because these things are going to happen more and more, and we have to be able to adjust as companies to be able to support that and that environment. And there's so many things that do concern me about that, because I've said this for years pre-COVID with high street retail dying. It's the whole thing of there's a whole bunch of people's pensions that have pension companies and investment funds have invested in those high street retail buildings because they were safe blue chip assets. Now suddenly they're not going to be full anymore. So prices are either going to have to drop or they're going to stay dormant, and it's going to be a face off for a little while. But that's people's pensions that are going to be devalued. And I always have had this worry because it's not as blue chip as safe investments as people think. And they're going to be devalued, and that means people's pensions are going to get devalued, and there's going to be consequences for that. And I'm very curious to see that and how that affects the market. And FX is the other thing that worries me. Foreign exchange. We do a lot of work because we manufacture in China, while at the same time sell majority of our goods in the US. The US is one of our biggest markets. So we sell a lot in the US. The USD against the pound, and the pound against it's really the USD because it's China. You have to work in USD anyway. So that whole FX exchange rates was really interesting, and it's been small little changes for us can make a really big deal. So making sure that what happens in our economies now in a post-COVID world, that we're on top of it. It's amazing. I've never watched so much American news in all my life. Even it's a lie. Come on, we had Trump. That was awesome. That was the one good thing about Trump. It was no, I'm not going to get into politics, all right? But on the funny side, news was really entertaining. It was like a comedy sketch show every single night. It was awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean,
Love him or hate him, it was entertaining. Okay, let's just say that. We'll leave it at that. But it was
yes.
there was something to talk about. But the leaving politics quickly, the other issue, which is politics for us in the UK, is Brexit. So Brexit is still a massive issue, especially for companies like ourselves who sell to Europe, there are major unanswered questions that still haven't been answered in our point of view. The ports, oh my God, I don't know what it's like in the States, but we have major issues in the UK with our ports at the moment. Stock, I mean, anyone who does what I do will understand straight away that, parts, anything that comes in on a ship, if it's not 3 months late, you pay for a container a year in advance and pay for it, and it's still 4 months late
No,
because of
I think you're actually highlighting one of the biggest issues that really I'd say product companies have, at least physical product companies. That whole supply chain is just
oh,
a mess. It's just a mess,
it
and
needs to be sorted.
yeah, and I joke. Just got a new apartment and tried to order a new couch, and the couch that I wanted wasn't going to be available to come for another 4 months. And I was
Oh
like,
no.
but I don't have anything to sit on now. Like I need a couch now. Like I never thought and it's just funny how long these things take. But Brad, it's been amazing to talk to you today. I mean, I love the work that you guys are doing at RotoVR, and that's a
Thanks,
really
mate. Cheers.
interesting challenging industry, but an exciting one. And certainly talking to you about the things that small to medium sized business startups have to be processing and going through to be successful. It's really an enjoyable conversation for me, and it's one that I think that a lot of companies unfortunately don't spend enough time getting their head around those challenges up front.
Mm.
So I'm glad that they can talk to Brad Channer about those things. uh, so Brad, if someone wants to reach out to you, tell me where they can find you.
Yeah, they can drop me an email if they want. It's at Brad at Accelerate Me, which is ACCELER number 8ME.com. Oh, just find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Bradley Channer in the world. I think now there's like a young kid somewhere in America with the same name, but I think it's gonna be pretty easy to determine between the two. So
Excellent.
drop me a thing on LinkedIn. I am not one of these LinkedIn snobs who ignore people. I'll just tell you to go away if you want to sell me FX.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, Brad, thank you so much for being on Uncaged. Uncaged is the show that provides a voice to executives from around the globe who are shaping the world of business today and mapping the path to the commerce of tomorrow. And Brad has been working with RotoVR as well as several other businesses over his career to help them navigate that first, second, third stage as they're scaling up. And we've been talking about such a wide array of issues, from funding to some of the challenges that you just have when you have a scaled business to build product at this time. And so it's been amazing to hear Brad's perspective on this stuff. Brad, thank you so much for joining us on Uncaged today, and I look forward to having you back.
Awesome. Thanks, mate. Cheers, Matt. Nice to meet you.
Cheers.